The second story I want to talk about is Story of an Hour. And one of the things I want you to consider about everything that we read is the title and how the title figures in. I've never really thought a whole lot about the title of this story. It does have a bearing, however, and we might want to ask ourselves why Chopin would want to call attention to this quick and fleeting notion, story of an hour. Part of it may just simply be that the story is very short. It's almost what we would call a piece of flash fiction today, although that term didn't exist back then. The story is about Mrs. Mallard and something that happens in her life. Her husband has gone away. She gets a message back that her husband has died in a train wreck. She immediately grieves. It's pretty clear that she loved her husband. And it doesn't take her long to understand the significance of it. Her sister's there and a friend of her husband's is there. But she wants to go up to her room. And as she begins this grieving process, she also has some other kind of emotion take over. And it is a surprising emotion. We would think badly of her if we hadn't seen her also grieving for her husband. But I want to read just a quick little part of the passage where, not because she's willing it, something just burst out of her. And yet she had loved him sometimes, often she had not. What did it matter? What could love, the unsolved mystery, count for in the face of this possession of self-assertion, which she suddenly recognized as the strongest impulse of her being? Free, body and soul free, she kept whispering. So it is not just grief that she's experiencing in that bedroom. It is freedom that she's experiencing in that bedroom. She's been married, and to some extent, that marriage has been repressive. We don't get any sense that he's been abusive to her, but that she has not been able to be in control of the things that she wants to do. And now with the passing of her husband, she's been given that gift, and her whole being is celebrating that and recognizing it. Nobody really understands this, and at first, Mrs. Mallard doesn't understand it either. But as time goes on, she does understand it. Now, the super irony of this story is that right about the time when her life is broken into this freedom that her whole being is celebrating, her husband returns home. It turns out he didn't die in the train wreck, and there he is greeting her, and he doesn't understand what the commotion is about. Now, up until the very last line of this story has been inside Mrs. Mallard's psyche. Again, this is a third person limited omniscience. We're in her mind, we're seeing her emotions, but then she dies. And so the story kind of telescopes out, and the narrator becomes this sort of overall omniscient narrator who tells us that everybody believes, when the doctors got there, that Mrs. Mallard had died of a heart attack because she was so full of joy that her husband was still alive. Now, we the readers, and I guess if Miss Mallard exists beyond the scope of her physical life, both know that it's not happiness that killed her. It's the loss of that freedom. Once she experienced it, she could not let go of it. And this, again, is another story where the irony is just rich and full. And to understand the story, we have to understand that irony. It's not what we would expect of a grieving woman, but the greater truth is at the center of that irony. Okay.